Parshas Mishpatim dedicated in memory of Rabbi Harav Yeshaya ben Harav Raphael. His neshama shav and Aliyah. So Mishpatim, I'll speak more further along about what the contents of the portion are, but the first part I want to just focus in on is the last part of the portion, which has a common denominator to last week's portion as well. So we know last week's portion was the portion about the revelation at Sinai, Kabbalah Torah. And I explained last week that the way that the Torah presents the narrative of the revelation, last week's portion deals with the bulk of the narrative, and it begins telling us the story about all the events which happened on the first of Sivan, the second of Sivan, the third of Sivan, and then leading up to the revelation on the 6th of Sivan. But there's one day which that portion misses out. It misses out the Thursday before Revelation. The revelation took place on Shabbos, so it doesn't tell us what happened on that Thursday. It skips it completely. And what the events of what happened on the Thursday before the revelation are presented at the end of this week's portion. So it's an interesting thing that it's split between two different portions, and I'll get to that later on. But in this narrative, in the fifth day narrative, so it quotes the very, very, very famous pasuk, which everyone knows, and I've drilled this into you over and over again, because it's nasa v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, and everyone, if I'd unmute you all, and I would say to you all together now, what chapter and verse does it appear in? And everyone is saying all together now, 24/7. Exodus 24/7, right? Nasa v'nishma, and the reason why it has to be 24/7, it's such an important pasuk because it underscores the relationship we have to Hashem. It really depicts and expresses the devotion and the commitment that I'm willing to do whatever it takes, whatever you want me to do, even before you tell me what to do. And that's the ultimate expression of love and commitment to somebody, that I'm prepared to do for you whatever you need. And the bond of love and the understanding between each other is so strong that I'm ready, poised, positioned, ready to perform your bidding, even before you tell me what to do. And that's why it's so special. It's such a special expression, not just kind of only going to do it when I listen to what you have to tell me to do, and I'm going to decide whether or not it makes sense for me to do, whether it's comfortable for me to do or not. Nasa v'nishma, I'm prepared to do it even before I hear about it. So that's Nasa v'nishma 24/7. I'd mentioned last week that in last week's portion, on the Tuesday before the revelation, they also said a similar expression. They said in chapter 19, verse 8, the verse says, the people in unison all said, we will do. So again, even before the revelation, they said, we're ready to do it. But you'll notice right away the difference, because in this portion, in Nasa v'nishma, it says, the Jewish people said, we will do and we will listen, right? In the verse, in chapter 19, verse 8, it doesn't say we'll do and we'll listen, it just says we will do, we're prepared to do. So the first omission, the first nuance to recognize the fact that it doesn't say we'll listen over there. Here it says we'll listen. There it says we're going to do. And another difference between the two verses is in this verse it says that the Jewish people said we will do and we will listen. In the verse in 19:8, it says the Jewish people all said, listen carefully, in unison. They all said in unison together, we will do. So there are two notable differences between the two verses. One is the earlier verse doesn't say anything about we'll listen, but it does say they all said in unison. And in this verse over here, it says we'll do and we'll listen, but it omits the expression they said in unison. That's the question, like what's going on? You'd overlook these kind of things. When you read through the Chumash quickly and without really paying a lot of attention, it's easy to overlook these details. But, I'm a glutton for details when it comes to this, when it comes to grammatical and word nuances. I just love how, these nuances yield such fascinating information and ideas and inspirational ideas. So on this one, the Meshech Chochmah, very famous commentary, Meshech Chochmah of Meir Simcha of Devinsk, explains that the difference between the two verses is based upon a very, very, very important idea. And that is that we know we have 613 mitzvahs altogether, right? That's the total number. The 10 Commandments are the heading of all the 613 mitzvahs, but altogether there are 613 mitzvahs. So ideally, properly so, we should really be fulfilling all 613. And the reason is because the Gemara says that the 613 are broken up into 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. 248 positive, 365 negative. And where do those numbers come from? A lot of different ideas, but one of the ideas of those numbers is that the 248 positive commandments correspond to 248 organs in the human body. And the 365 negative commandments correspond to the 365 sinews. The positive commandments correspond to the 248 organs, such that when a person performs these commandments, all of them together, they spiritualize and they energize every part of ourselves. Every part, every organ and every sinew, every part of the physical person becomes energized and spiritualized by the mitzvahs. And that's the idea of mitzvahs. The mitzvahs, they lift us up. They bring us closer to Hashem. They are devices of connecting ourselves to Hashem. They spiritualize us. So the ideal is that we should all fulfill all 613 mitzvahs, because if we have 613 parts, we need all 613 mitzvahs to be done. So that's nice and it's fine. Problem is that there's no one person who can be obligated in all 613 mitzvahs simultaneously, because you'd have to be both male, female, a Kohen, a Levi, a non-Levi, married, singled, and divorced. You have to have all, because some mitzvahs apply to Kohanim, some apply to women, some apply to men, some apply to married people, some apply to unmarried people. So it's really impossible for a person to fulfill all 613 mitzvahs in any one, in an entire lifetime. The only way that you could fulfill them is it being like a merging of everyone. It's impossible. So how do you fulfill all 613? If it's so important to fulfill 613 and to spiritualize every part of ourselves, how do we have access to all the mitzvahs if we can only do some of them? And that even nowadays, actually, without the Beis Hamikdash and without the laws, many of the laws of the Beis Hamikdash and laws of impurity and impurity in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, we have a lot less mitzvahs. There's only a few hundred, maybe 200 or 300 mitzvahs available to us today. So how do we have access to the 613? So the answer is there are two ways to have access to all 613 in addition to actually performing the mitzvahs. So one way to have access to the mitzvahs is through the concept called arvus. And arvus means mutual responsibility. And that's something which was established at Sinai as well, the mutual responsibility and the unity of the Jewish people, such that before the revelation at Sinai, everyone was a single player by himself and herself. Sinai brought about a merging together of the souls of the Jewish people to become one soul, one body, one people, so that when anyone in the people, any person performs a mitzvah in the people, it's like everyone's doing it. And we benefit from the mutual connectivity of everyone doing the mitzvahs together. A Jew should not look at himself and herself as being like this separate world unto himself. We're part of a whole. We're part of the Jewish people. And just like parts of the body benefit from other parts of the body, one Jew benefits from the other Jew's performance of mitzvahs. So that if I can't do certain mitzvahs, but you're doing those mitzvahs, I benefit by virtue of the connectivity and the relationship and the mutuality between all of us together. That's the nature, that's called arvus. That's one technique of how I can have access spiritually to all the mitzvahs combined. And another technique is by learning about the mitzvahs. The Gemara says if you learn about a mitzvah and you really think about the mitzvah and you learn about it, even those mitzvahs which you never have any access to do whatsoever, by learning about the mitzvahs, like you actually fulfill the mitzvah. And that's why in davening, we have at the beginning of davening morning in Shachris, we have all these sections about the karbonos, the sacrifices, not because we can't perform sacrifices today, but the Gemara says by learning about the sacrifices and understanding them, it's as though we actually brought a sacrifice even today. So we have two techniques of how to have access to the spiritual power of a mitzvah, either by connecting myself with other people, right, and by you're doing the mitzvahs which I can't do, then it's like I'm fulfilling those mitzvahs. By me fulfilling the mitzvahs which you can't do, it's like you're fulfilling the mitzvahs. We're all one body, one unity together. And the other way is by learning about the mitzvahs, by putting our minds and hearts into the understanding of the mitzvah. That's like we actually fulfill the mitzvah. Now, this doesn't mean to say that a person could just rely only, listen, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to stay in bed. I know the Shachris is at 7:30 in the morning. Listen, Bart, can you go to Shachris for me? Go to Shul on my behalf. And people say this, can you do this mitzvah on my behalf? These two techniques are only applicable to somebody who is completely unable to do those mitzvahs by way of law itself. I can't do those mitzvahs are not applicable to me. But if a mitzvah is applicable to me, then of course, the way to do it is by doing it. But if a mitzvah is not applicable to me, so I can take advantage of those two other techniques of either connectivity to the Jewish people or by learning about the mitzvah. So those two techniques are all alluded to in those two verses, because listen carefully again to what the verses say. The first verse says, back in last week's portion, chapter 19, verse 8, it says, all the Jewish people said in unison, they all said together as one collective group, we are going to do the mitzvahs. So therein, that's the allusion to the fact that we're all connected, and by us all being connected, right, all putting our arms together and being connected as one unified whole people, it's like we're all doing it together. That's one technique. And then this week's portion, it omits the expression they answered in unison, but instead of that, it puts in, we will do it and we'll listen. We're going to do it and we're going to listen, because that's the other technique. By listening and understanding and learning about the mitzvahs, that gives us access to all the mitzvahs, by doing and by listening. And that's why the two verses combine together to provide the whole framework, the whole technique of how you have access to all the mitzvahs combined. So this, I thought it was a brilliant insight and recognition. You see how these two verses, which could just fly by you without any consideration, you don't notice these differences, and because of that difference, because of these two differences, it yields this this very, very important concept, and it teaches us. It reminds us again of the holistic nature, the holistic character of the Torah. The holistic nature of Torah and mitzvahs is that we need all of them. Every Jew needs all the mitzvahs. We need, for the spirituality and the elevation of our souls, we need to be connected to all the mitzvahs. And we do have access to all the mitzvahs by these two, by doing the mitzvahs, by learning about the mitzvahs, and by connecting myself with other people and making myself part of the community. And we're all one unit together. Thereby, I have access to the spirituality of all the mitzvahs together, because mitzvahs are not there for the picking, right? Mitzvahs are not it's not a smorgasbord. I mean, that's something which we, unfortunately, has become all too often a phenomena that, we pick and choose which mitzvahs we like. I like learning Torah, so I'm going to do that, but I don't keep Shabbos. I like keeping Shabbos, so I'm not going to learn and do any of the mitzvahs. And everyone picks and chooses what mitzvahs they like. That's not how Judaism works. All the mitzvahs, it's like a human body, again, like the 613 parts of the body. You can't have one part without the other part. I mean, obviously, there are certain vital organs, but for the whole wholesome and healthy functioning of the human body, we need all the parts of the body working and functioning together. So we need all the 613 mitzvahs functioning and working together to create a spiritual whole and a spiritual elevation to our entire being. So we need all the mitzvahs. Judaism is holistic, and the name of this class today is called Holistic Holiness. Holistic Holiness, right? Because there is another example of this, another example of holistic holiness, that it needs to all be combined together, is brought out from the beginning of the portion. So I'm going to speak now also about the portion at large as well. But before I get into that, the beginning of the portion is called Mishpatim. And Mishpatim means laws. These are the laws. We'll speak about what the laws are in a second. But these are the laws that Hashem said to Moshe, place before the Jewish people. These are the laws to place before the Jewish people. And it goes on with all the different laws in the portion. But the oddity, again, another zeroing in and being I seeing the nuance of it. And it's not me, this is Rashi over here. It's very obvious. The portion begins, even in the English, you can see this. It says, it starts off terribly. It says, and these are the ordinances that you shall place before them. And who starts off a sentence with and? You are told, never start a sentence with and let alone a chapter, let alone a whole portion of the Torah to start off with the word and these are the laws which you're supposed to place before them. So how can it say that? Vav is the letter for and. So Rashi explains, he says the reason is, there's a significance, in Hebrew there's a significance, because any place where where a sentence begins with the word eileh, which means these are, and it just says eileh, not and these are, but plain these are, so posel eser rishonim, that puts a break between this and the previous subject. These are the blank, 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 whatever follows. But if it says ve'ela, and these are the blank, 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 that's a code expression for Mosif ala rishonim. It means to add on to what was previously mentioned, meaning even though it's a new subject, but you have to connect. I mean, the truth is, it's the same thing in English as well, because you're saying and there's a connective word. So it's not just it's even fundamentally significant. So the point being is that, forget the grammar, but in Hebrew, text, it's totally valid to start a sentence with and, because it indicates that this is fundamentally connected to the previous subject matter. So the Torah is alluding to the fact that this portion, these laws, are fundamentally connected to the previous portion. Now, what are these laws about? What are the laws we're talking about in this week's portion? So it's well known that this portion contains the whole slew, a major series of laws relating to social justice and damages and financial law and social ethics. That's the Mishpatim. It stands out as being the portion of social ethics and laws. And that's the subject matter of Mishpatim, a lot of laws like that. And by saying, and that last week's portion was about the revelation, right? The end of last week's was all about the revelation. So by saying that and these are the laws that you have to give the Jewish people, and connecting it fundamentally to the previous portion, teaches us, as Rashi says, Ma Rishonim, Sinai, just as the earlier laws in last week's portion were from Sinai, Af Elu Sinai. These are also from Sinai. These laws of ethics, these laws of social justice, these laws of the judiciary, these laws of finances, these laws of damages and personal injury, all of these laws, these are also from Sinai. They're from Sinai in as much as every other law is from Sinai as well. And that's what the message over here is. It's all from Sinai. It's all from God. Even the ethics are from God as well. Now, you may wonder, isn't that obvious? It's obvious it's all from God. The answer is not necessarily, because when people speak about religion, what does religion mean? It's common, if you ask someone on the street, what's the definition of religion? You'll say, religion is, going to shul, and praying and doing any God-related type of activity, rituals. That's what religion is. People wouldn't necessarily say religion. Would you call religion being a nice person? Would you call religion not stealing? It's of course religion. The religion may demand that of us, but you wouldn't call being ethical, or not stealing, that he's a very religious person. It doesn't really the two terms don't really go together. That's how it is in the world at large. But from a Jewish standpoint, it's totally religion. It's totally religion. It's all from God. There's no difference between the laws of interpersonal obligations and the laws of man-God obligations we have. And the mitzvahs are actually divided that way. The mitzvahs are divided between these two categories of man-God commandments and man-man commandments. And the message is that we have to always remember that in as much as the man-God mitzvahs are from God, the man-man mitzvahs are from God as well. Now, it's interesting because I was thinking about it before I was preparing, because different people gravitate more towards one category. It's in the more, so to speak, the more religious communities, there's there is a big focus on the man-God mitzvahs, and then the secular community is man-man, right? So the notion of some mitzvahs being more important than other mitzvahs, again, it goes back to that point. It's holistic. All mitzvahs are essential. They're all part of the 613. They're all part of our spiritualizing. And it doesn't make a difference if it's the man-God or the man-man. So for those people who think, well, yeah, being a nice person, being a mensch, that's what Judaism is all about. It's true, plus more. The other side, the man-God mitzvahs. If you think these are important, these are also important. And the people who may feel that the man-God mitzvahs are the most important, it's true, they're very, very important. But the man-man mitzvahs are equally as important. They're all part of the whole system. And they're all from God. They're all from Hashem. And there are so many examples of this. There's so many examples how this comes out. The Vav at the beginning, alluded to that, the letter Vav, and connecting is last week's portion. Also, the very fact that the narrative of the revelation, are bookends of Parshas Mishpatim. So I mentioned it before that it's interesting how the Thursday before Revelation is discussed in this week's portion, and the other days are discussed in last week's portion. Why are they divided this way? Well, at least one answer is is that the laws of interpersonal ethics are sandwiched between two reminders that even these are from God, they're divine laws themselves as well. So it's bookended. So the revelation bookends the ethics as well. Another example, Pirkei Avos is a good example. Pirkei Avos, beautiful, thing to study and to learn. It's all about ethics. It's the Mishnah about ethics and interpersonal, midos, etc., attributes. So Pirkei Avos appears in terms of the sequence of the tractates of the Mishnah. It appears much later on. It's in the much later on. So yet at the beginning of Pirkei Avos, the very opening line of Pirkei Avos is Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, and Moshe transmitted it to Yoshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders transmitted it to the Jewish people. So all of a sudden, at the beginning of Pirkei Avos, it makes this big announcement. Where did the Torah come from? It came from Hashem at Sinai. And the question is a very famous question. Why did the author of the Mishnah, Yehuda Anasi, wait till Pirkei Avos to announce the origin of the Torah? He should have presented this and made this announcement at the very, 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 very beginning of the Mishnah, the very beginning of the Mishnah, the first tractate of Mishnah. This Mishnah, this oral tradition, we spoke about this last week, the oral tradition came from Sinai too. So that announcement that all comes from Sinai should have been placed at the very beginning of the entire Mishnah. Why did he wait until Pirkei Avos to tell us that? The answer is because Pirkei Avos is all about the ethics again. It's all about interpersonal obligations, about the ethics. And people could think, oh yeah, well that's something which man makes up. And that's something which we don't need God for, right? We don't need God for that. And the answer is no, we need God for that as well. We need God for all of our mitzvahs. And that's why he makes this announcement before Pirkei Avos. This is also from Hashem. This is also from Sinai as well. And another example, there's many examples. Another example is the Luchos. The Luchos, right? So in the end of our portion as well, right? The end of the portion, it tells us the sequel of the revelation. What was the sequel of the revelation? That Moshe, after he'd heard the Ten Commandments, the Jewish people had heard the Ten Commandments from Hashem at Sinai, then Moshe then goes up to the mountain, right, to get the tablets, because those 10 commandments are going to be engraved upon the tablets of stone, and he's going to bring them down. Now, those tablets of stone, actually people don't realize the way that the picture is conveyed of the tablets. Typically, the picture is like this, kind of like stone, like this, with the kind of it typically looks like one stone. That's not actually how it was. The word luchos, tablets, is plural, because actually the 10 Commandments were engraved on two separate stone tablets. They were separated from each other. There were two tablets, and that's in the word luchos, right? The luach is a tablet, plural is luchos, and they were on two separate tablets. And what was written on the two separate tablets? Well, there were 10 Commandments. So the first 5 commandments are all about man-God commandments, belief in God, keep the Shabbos, right? All the man-God commandments are on the first set of are in the first 5, and they were engraved on one tablet. And the man, not to steal, not to murder, were engraved on the second tablet, right? So they're on 2 different tablets. And the interesting thing, the odd thing again, with words and letters, right? The word for tablets in Hebrew is spelled Lamed Vav Ches Vav Tov, right? There's a Vav at the end. There's a Vav at the end, Luchot, right? The O is like a Vav. Now, wherever the Torah uses the word Luchos, it always omits the second Vav. It always omits it. Now, if it omits it, it could look like, if you don't read it right, it could look like a singular noun. Because instead of reading it because we don't have the vowels written in the Sefer Torah, so the word, if you have it with the Vav, then you'll clearly read it as Luchot, which is plural. But if you take the Vav out, then it could be read, if you don't know what the meaning of the word is, as Luchat, as a singular noun, singular noun. And the Torah, whenever it mentions the tablets, it always takes out that Vav. It doesn't have the Vav in there, which kind of could mislead a person to read it as a singular noun. Why is that? Simple answer. To teach us again the singularity and the unity of the 2 sets of tablets. Even though they are written on 2 separate tablets, man-God commandments and man-man commandments, don't think that they're separate from each other. They're really one entity, all merging together as one emanation from the will of God. They're all from God. The man-God and the man-man commandments are all from God. And that's alluded. And another example, right, is there in the end of the portion as well. Another example. One of the things, again, that happened before the revelation, on the Thursday before the revelation. The verse says that I mentioned this last week, that they brought sacrifices. They brought sacrifices, and then Moshe performed his blood service with the sacrifice, and took the blood, and he sprinkled some blood on the he made an altar. This is again before the revelation. He made an altar, and he sprinkled some blood on that altar, and he took the rest of the blood and he sprinkled on the Jewish people, right? And this actually was a part of the process of bringing the Jewish people into the covenant with God, even before the revelation itself. But the verse says, Yikach Moshe Chatzi Adam, that Moshe took half the blood. But the truth is, it doesn't say that he divided the blood. Prior to that, it just says he took half the blood. And Rashi says, who split the blood into two different basins? It was in two separate basins. And Moshe took half the blood, took that half of the blood, sprinkled on the altar, and the other half on the people. Rashi says, well, who divided the blood? Well, you and I would say, well, didn't Moshe split the blood? He must have divided the blood into two separate basins. Rashi says, no, an angel divided the blood. An angel when the sacrifices were done, an angel came along and split the blood into two separate basins, and Moshe took one basin of blood and sprinkled it on the altar, and the other basin he sprinkled on the people. So Rashi's telling you, an angel split the blood. Angel divided the blood into two separate basins. Why? What's that about? The Gemara says that one big difference between angels and people, right, is that human beings are vague with respect to angels, meaning they say we can't be precise and exact as much as an angel can be. An angel has the ability to be so perfectly precise down to the last nth of a degree, but a human being can't do it. We have we have to factor in error messages in our behavior and in our calculations. It's impossible for a human being to be able to, even for Moshe, to be able to be perfectly exact in splitting the blood down the middle to create an equal amount of blood in one basin and an equal amount of blood in a different basin. Only an angel can do that. But you may say, so who cares if Moshe doesn't get an exact split? The answer is, the blood sprinkled on the altar symbolized the man-God mitzvahs, the rituals, the religious mitzvahs. That Judaism is it's a split, or it's not a split, but it's two different parts. There's the blood on the altar that we have to show our devotion and our mesiras nefesh in the man-God mitzvahs symbolized by the altar, and the other portion of blood is sprinkled on the people to indicate that the unison and the being together as the people, being one as a people, that also requires mesiras nefesh and self-sacrifice. Again, there can't be any imbalance between the two of them. They are perfectly synchronized, perfectly balanced between the two of them. Everything is from Hashem, and this is the message over here. It really brings home the idea of the holistic nature of Yiddishkeit, that everything is, again, I can't emphasize enough how much we have to remind ourselves, whatever mitzvahs I'm gravitating towards, whatever mitzvahs I enjoy doing more than other mitzvahs, think about it. That devotion, am I applying that same energy and devotion to the other mitzvahs as well? To the other mitzvahs, all mitzvahs require devotion. If I'm drawn more towards the interpersonal and the ethical and the kind of being nice and the mensch mitzvahs, okay? So what are the other mitzvahs? Is God chopped liver? That he only deserves one set of mitzvahs? If I'm so devout and so precise and so medaktek, as we say, in the mitzvahs being between me and God and the tefillin and making sure that someone came over to me this morning. I mean, and he was showing me his tefillin, and he was saying, you see over here, there's some of the, because with the tefillin, if the black comes off the tefillin, right, then it could lead to the tefillin being no longer valid, right? You have to kind of know how much. So he's showing me, is that okay? Yeah, so I said it was okay, it's whatever. So, but that degree of precision, are we applying that degree of precision to our interpersonal mitzvahs, in the chesed, in the tzedakah, right? In the helping other people? Do we apply the same degree of precision? So, it's interesting that one of the most outstanding personalities of our recent generations, who was just the paragon of piety in so many respects, was the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim, Yisrael Meir Kagan, your grandson, named after him, right? Mrs. Lessons, Mrs. Green, Yisrael Meah, right? So Yisrael Meah Kagan was the Chofetz Chaim. Now, what was he most famous for? If you ask, what are the most famous works that he wrote? It's interesting. The most famous works, and almost any religious Jew, in the entire world will have both of these books in his library. So one of them is the famous Mishnah Berurah, which is his commentary on the Code of Jewish Law, but primarily ritual law, Shabbos and brachos and prayer. It's all about that's the Mishnah Berurah. He had and it's so hair-splitting commentary on every aspect of ritual law, of Shabbos and Shabbos and prayer and blessings, hair-splitting details. Mishnah Berurah, very, very famous work. His other very, very, very famous work is what's called the Sefer Chofetz Chaim, all the laws about Lashon Hara, about ethical speech. And the other one is Avos Chesed, the laws of doing Chesed and kindness. And that's what he's most known for, these books. And it's beautiful that they encompass the whole spectrum of Judaism, because in the same way that precise laws are needed for the tefillin, and for Shabbos, and for kashrus, precise laws are needed for ethical speech, and acts of kindness, and having guests over, and visiting the sick. Everything is circumscribed by the law, because, again, the Torah's view is it's all from Hashem, and it's all from Hashem. There are halachas about every single facet of Judaism, both the interpersonal as well as the man-God mitzvahs as well. And, the Chofetz Chaim himself was an outcome, so to speak, of the earlier sage, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. Rabbi Yisrael Salanta was the kind of, quote-unquote, the founder, they say, that was the founder of the Musar movement. Musar means really all about ethical conduct and being a mensch, and the teachings about that. When they say that he was the founder, it's not really true, because Musar and ethics have been in Judaism from time immemorial, from Sinai, as we're seeing from over here. But he kind of resurrected and put that emphasis back on the map of Jewish study in the 1800s when he lived. But his yortzeit, and the reason why why this is so appropriate, because his yortzeit, the Rabbi Yisrael Salanta's yortzeit, was none other than Parshas Mishpatim, this week's portion. And I actually looked on the calendar before that his precise yortzeit, his precise yortzeit was actually 2 days ago, the 25th of Shvat, in 1883. So we should also dedicate this class in memory of Yisrael Salanta, just a few days ago. And looking at the calendar, 25th of Shvat, 1883, that's a significant date for me and for my wife, because our anniversary was the 25th of Shvat, 1993. So I told my wife, I said, guess what? First of all, we both forgot it was our Hebrew anniversary a few days ago, so that's besides the point. But so Hebrew is in February, but it's so I said our anniversary was 2 days ago on the 25th of Shvat, same yortzeit as not same, the yortzeit of Yisrael Salanta. So that was a reminder, to follow in the footsteps of Yisrael Salanta in terms of his midos and his character traits and his kindness. So this is the importance. It's very apropos. It's in Parshas Mishpatim. But about Rabbi Yisrael Salanta, there's a very famous story about him himself, that he was going to bake matzahs. He used to bake matzahs. There was a tradition before Pesach we eat matzahs on Pesach, but there's a big tradition that people go themselves to matzah bakeries and bake their own matzahs. It's a very nice thing to do. To go as a chabura, a group together. It's also it's also connote the idea of connectivity and oneness as a Jewish people. They go as a group together, similar to how the Korban Pesach was often in times of the Beis Hamikdash, as groups, not as individuals. So people do this till today. So they go to matzah bakeries in Muncie and Lakewood and all these places. They go, and that's a tradition. So Yisrael Salanta used to go every single year. He used to take a group with him of disciples. So eventually he got very old. He couldn't go. He was too old to go himself. So he sent his disciples, his students, to go to bake matzahs on his behalf. And they said to him before they went, Rebbe, we want to make sure that we bake these matzahs according to all of your meticulous details of halacha, all the hidurim, all of the details. What are your hidurim? What are your, all the nuances of how you like to you bake your matzahs? So he said to them, he says, here's my hidur mitzvah of making sure the matzahs are baked properly. Don't yell at the lady cleaning up the bakery between every shift. Don't yell at her, because she's a widow and an orphan, And you have to be very, very careful not to cause any pain and distress to someone like that. That's my hiddur mitzvah, he said to them. So it was really it hits home the point, because sometimes, again, the emphasis, the desire to want to be meticulous, and I don't get me wrong, being meticulous in mitzvahs, because mitzvahs are holistic. It's all one system. Meticulousness is necessary, all the mitzvahs. But we've got to be careful to make sure that the meticulousness in one area applies equally to the other area as well. And I just literally, before my wife sent me a thing on the WhatsApp, there was another story about another Rebbe. The name was the Kapishnitzah Rebbe. This happened more recent years. There was a young boy by the name of Meir, little boy Meir, went to, we used to kind of go with these groups to make matzahs before Pesach, and he was with this Kapishnitzah Rebbe, a very holy man, and he was baking, and then this was a few weeks before Pesach, and after they baked the matzahs, so the Rebbe went into his pocket and he started giving out little kind of envelopes of money to all the people who helped him with the matzah baking. He said, "I want to just thank you so much. You're so helpful. It was, without you, we couldn't have done this." And he was so appreciative. He gave money to everybody. That's what he did. And a few weeks later, Erev Pesach, so the Rebbe was back again in the bakery baking more matzahs with a different group of people. And then this young boy, Meir, happened to be there again with him. And again, the Rebbe, after the baking, he took out of his pocket envelopes to give out to all the people who helped him. So then one of them happened to have been there the earlier time, a few weeks earlier. So he said, Rebbe, he said, "Listen, you already gave me, after he gave him the money, he said, you already gave me a few weeks later, I already took a few weeks later, you don't have to give me again." So the Rebbe responded to him, we're not in this world. He said, listen to this, he said, we're not in this world just to be yotzei. Now, the word, I'll explain what this meant. To be yotzei means, in the Hebrew expression, to fulfill the basic requirements of the mitzvah. Just to get away with the basic, bare bones essential of the mitzvah. That's the expression to be yotzei. He says, I'm not here to be yotzei. I'm not in this world just to get away with the bare bones basics of the mitzvah. You're right, I gave you a few weeks ago, but did you help me today? I'm going to give you more today. And this Meir was so impressed by these words. We're not in this world just to get away and to be yotzei, to fulfill the bare bones details of a mitzvah, bare bones essentials of mitzvah. A person who loves mitzvahs, a person who understands the importance of a mitzvah, it's part of our elevation. It's part of our connection to Hashem. It's part of becoming who we're supposed to become. It's not enough just to be yotzei. We want to do the mitzvah in the best way possible. The Rebbe wanted to do the mitzvah in the best way, and he was so impressed, this boy Meir was so impressed by those words. He was so inspired. It stayed with him for years and years and years and years to come. Guess who that Meir became? That young Meir is Reb Meir Zlotowitz, who is the founder, chief editor, the founder of Art Scroll. So Art Scroll, with it is all over the place. Everyone knows Art Scroll, the Gemaras. That was Reb Meir Zlotowitz, and that was what really infused and kind of energized all of his work from there on in his life. He wasn't here just to be yotzei, just to fulfill, just to get away with bare bones basics. He wanted to do more and more and more and more. And that's the message, that every mitzvah is so essential, no matter what department the mitzvah is in, whether it's in the man or the man-God, all mitzvahs are essential. It's one holistic system. We have to have access to all the mitzvahs, and even if we can't do all the mitzvahs, we can learn about the mitzvahs, we can connect ourselves to people who are doing the mitzvahs, but whatever mitzvahs we can do ourselves, they are our pipeline. They're our lifeline to Hashem, and we're not here just to simply get away with the bare bones basics. We want to be able to do it fully with a lot of enthusiasm and really, live with the mitzvahs, the expression of Nasa v'Nishma. I'm ready to do more than even what you even asked me to do. I want to be connected to you, and I understand these mitzvahs are a way to connect to you. I'm ready to do them no matter what, and I want to do them with a lot of brand, enthusiasm, and excitement. And I want to don't just fulfill the basics. I want to do them as much as I can with all the mitzvahs, and everything is equal, everything is holistic, and it's holistic holiness. So we should all merit to have, that in our lives, a commitment, a complete commitment, a holistic commitment to all our mitzvahs. May it all just bring about, be a contribution to the coming of the Mashiach very quickly.